Ambassador Kevin Mitchell sat alone in his office on the diplomatic station orbiting Arcturus Prime. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. He rubbed his tired eyes. 3 decades of diplomatic service had led to this moment, a peace treaty nearly complete between Earth and the mighty Arcturian Empire. The communication panel on his desk lit up with an urgent signal. Kevin pressed the receive button, expecting a message about final treaty details. Instead, the wall screen filled with the stern face of Emperor Zorkath. The Emperor's blue skin looked almost gray in the harsh lighting of what appeared to be a military command center. "People of the galaxy," the Emperor began, his voice deep and cold. "Today, the Arcturian Empire sends a message that will echo across the stars." Kevin leaned forward. This was not a scheduled address. The camera view widened to show a massive open area. Kevin recognized it immediately. The main plaza of New Hope Colony on Rigel 7. Thousands of people stood in rows, surrounded by Arcturian soldiers. Many were on their knees. There were families, children. Kevin's blood turned to ice. The colony of Rigel 7 has chosen to reject imperial rule, the Emperor continued. They have harbored rebels, withheld resources, and attempted to declare independence. Such actions cannot be tolerated. The door to Kevin's office slid open as his aide, Samantha Powell, rushed in. "Sir, are you seeing this? I've been trying to contact Earth, but all channels air." Kevin raised his hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Let this serve as a reminder of the cost of defiance," said the Emperor. With a simple nod from Zorkath, the soldiers raised their weapons. No warning, no final words allowed. The weapons fired, not in a chaotic burst, but in organized waves. Row after row of colonists fell. The soldiers moved with mechanical precision, allowing the camera drones to capture every death. "My God," Samantha whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Kevin couldn't speak. He recognized faces in the crowd. Just 3 months ago, he had visited Rigel 7 to discuss their concerns. He had promised to bring their requests for greater autonomy to the Emperor. He had told them to be patient, to trust the diplomatic process. He had shaken hands with colony leader Alan Foster. He had visited the school where little Grace Anderson had given him a drawing of Earth and Arcturus Prime with a rainbow between them. Now he watched them die. All of them. The broadcast continued for 42 minutes. No one was spared. When it ended, the Emperor's face filled the screen again. "The peace talks with Earth will continue as scheduled tomorrow. We expect their delegation to arrive with a more cooperative attitude." The screen went black. Silence filled the room, broken only by Samantha's quiet sobs. Kevin stood slowly. His hands didn't shake. His voice didn't waver. Something inside him had shifted, hardened like steel cooling after intense heat. "Sam, contact Captain Lee. Tell him to prepare the shuttle." "Sir?" Samantha wiped her eyes. "What are you going to do?" Kevin walked to the wall safe behind his desk. He entered his code and removed a small metal box, the emergency protocols only to be used if diplomacy completely failed. Inside was a quantum communicator keyed directly to Earth's highest military command. "The talks are over," he said quietly. "But sir, if we break off negotiations, the Emperor might." 50,000 people, Sam. Kevin's voice was soft but razor sharp. 50,000 lives just ended because I told them to trust in diplomacy. Kevin removed his diplomatic insignia pin from his jacket, the gold and silver emblem that had represented his life's work. He placed it carefully on his desk. "Contact Earth," he said as he activated the quantum communicator. "Tell them Ambassador Mitchell died today on Rigel 7. "And who should I say is coming home?" Samantha asked, her voice small. Kevin looked at her, his eyes reflecting not grief but something far more dangerous. The last diplomat the Arcturian Empire will ever see. He turned to the room's recorder and spoke the words that would soon echo across human space. No terms, no quarter, no forgiveness. 1 week after the broadcast, Kevin Mitchell stood before the United Earth Congress. The grand hall was packed. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls. No one spoke. No one coughed. The silence was heavy with anger and grief. Behind Kevin, the large screen showed frozen images from the massacre. He had refused to play the full video. These elected officials didn't need to see all of it. The still images were enough. Kevin no longer wore his diplomatic uniform. Instead, he dressed in a simple black suit. His face looked older. The lines around his eyes had deepened. He hadn't slept much. "Members of Congress," he began, his voice firm and clear. "1 week ago, the Arcturian Empire executed 50,000 colonists on Rigel 7. Men, women, and children. All dead because they asked for basic freedoms." He pressed a button, and the screen showed the face of a middle-aged man. "This is Alan Foster. He was the colony leader. He believed in peaceful change. He trusted my word that diplomacy would work." Kevin clicked again. A child's face appeared. "This is Grace Anderson. She was 7 years old. The day I visited her school, she gave me a drawing of Earth and Arcturus Prime connected by a rainbow. She wanted to be a diplomat when she grew up." Several members of Congress lowered their heads. Some wiped tears. "For 30 years, Kevin continued, we have tried to work with the Empire. We gave up mining rights on 6 planets. We accepted unfair trade deals. We looked away when they crushed other species, all because we hoped, in time, they would change." He took a deep breath. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. The Arcturian Empire understands only one thing: power. And they believe we are weak." Congressman William Harding stood up. He was known as the strongest voice for peace in the Congress. His white hair and kind face had been on posters calling for harmony between species for decades. "Ambassador Mitchell," he said, his voice shaking, "I have fought against military action my entire life. But after watching what they did..." Tears ran down his wrinkled cheeks. "What do you suggest we do?" Kevin looked directly at him. "I am no longer an ambassador, sir. That role died with the people of Rigel 7. He turned to address the entire Congress. "For 30 years I tried to prevent war. Now I stand before you to demand it." The room erupted. Some members shouted approval. Others looked shocked. President Olivia Garcia raised her hand for quiet. "What you're asking for would mean the largest military operation in human history," she said, "possibly millions dead on both sides." Kevin nodded. "Yes, Madam President. And if we do nothing, billions will die in the years to come. The Emperor has shown us who he is. He will not stop with Rigel 7. President Garcia studied him. "You understand what you're asking." "I do." Kevin's voice never wavered. "I watched children die because I told them to trust in peace. I will carry that weight forever. But I will not watch it happen again." The president stood. Her dark eyes scanned the room. "I am placing before this Congress Declaration 773. Authorization for total war against the Arcturian Empire. All in favor." Hands rose across the chamber. Even Congressman Harding raised his trembling hand. Opposed. Not a single hand went up. President Garcia nodded grimly. "The vote is 193 to 0 in favor. The declaration passes." She turned to Kevin. "What will you do now?" Kevin's face showed no joy at the victory, only resolve. "With your permission, Madam President, I wish to serve as diplomatic executor." A murmur ran through the room. The position of diplomatic executor had only been created twice in Earth's history. They were the ones who delivered final terms, or final judgment, to enemies who had committed unforgivable acts. "Granted," said the president. "May God have mercy on the Arcturian Empire. Because humanity will not." Admiral Hannah Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UE Dreadnought _Retribution _ At 2 kilometers long, it was the largest warship humans had ever built. Through the massive viewports, she watched hundreds of ships gather around Jupiter's moons. "Status report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the weight of what was coming. Commander Peter Johnson, her second-in-command, stepped forward with a tablet. 300 capital ships assembled, Admiral. 2,000 support vessels. Troop carriers are loading the last of the Marines. 5 million soldiers ready for deployment. Hannah nodded. Never in human history had such a force been gathered. Military analysts predicted a long war, perhaps 10 years or more. The Arcturian Empire controlled 17 solar systems. They had ruled for 10,000 years. Their technology was advanced. Their forces were vast. But they had never faced a truly united humanity before. The _vengeance _ justice and _reckoning have completed their weapon tests. Peter continued. All Nova packages are secured and ready. Hannah frowned. The Nova packages were a last resort. Weapons capable of destroying entire planets. President Garcia had authorized their deployment only under the most extreme circumstances. I hope we never have to use those, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am, Peter agreed. He hesitated, then added, Admiral, the Diplomatic Corps shuttle is requesting permission to dock. Hannah raised an eyebrow. Diplomatic Corps. The war declaration was unanimous. What's left to discuss? Not diplomats, ma'am. It's the diplomatic executor. Hannah straightened her uniform. She had heard rumors about who had been appointed to that position. If they were true, grant permission and escort them to the bridge immediately. 10 minutes later, the bridge doors slid open. Commander Johnson entered, followed by a man in a gray uniform that Hannah had only seen in history books, the formal dress of a diplomatic executor. The uniform had no rank insignia, no medals, no decorations of any kind. Just a simple patch showing Earth with a black band across it, the symbol of humanity in mourning. Kevin Mitchell had changed in the 3 weeks since the declaration of war. His face was thinner. His eyes were harder. He carried himself differently, no longer with the careful poise of a diplomat, but with the rigid posture of a man on a mission. Ambassador, Hannah began. Diplomatic executor, Kevin corrected her, his voice flat. Ambassador Mitchell died watching children disintegrated for the crime of being born on the wrong planet. On what's left. Hannah studied him carefully. She had seen that look before, in soldiers who had lost too much, but hadn't allowed themselves to process it yet. It was dangerous. It was also exactly what Earth needed right now. The President authorized Protocol Omega, she asked. Kevin nodded once. Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. Protocol Omega gave the diplomatic executor near absolute authority. He could order executions. He could accept surrenders. He could even authorize the use of Nova packages without additional approval from Earth. Such power had never been granted in Hannah's lifetime. The Arcturians chose to make this personal, Kevin said. We're simply honoring their decision. Hannah turned back to the viewport. The fleet was nearly ready. Ships of all sizes moved into formation. Fighter squadrons practiced attack patterns between the larger vessels. Supply ships made final deliveries. We launch in 6 hours, she said. The journey to Arcturian space will take 8 days at maximum warp. That gives us time to review battle plans. Kevin shook his head. There's something you should see first. He handed her a small data drive. This contains information about Operation Trojan. For 30 years, Earth has been preparing for this possibility. Hannah connected the drive to her console. As she read, her eyes widened. It means the Arcturians have already lost, Kevin said. They just don't know it yet. Hannah looked up at him. Did the Congress know about this when they voted for war? No, only the President and Joint Chiefs. Some secrets need to be kept, even in a democracy. Hannah looked back at the fleet gathering outside. 5 million soldiers preparing to fight and die. And all along, the Arcturians killed 50,000 innocent people to send a message, Kevin said, following her thoughts. We're going to send one back. 8 days after leaving Earth, the human fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of Arcturian space. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the _Retribution_, watching the scanners light up with enemy ships. Arcturian border fleet detected, reported Lieutenant Susan Morin from her station. Count is 500 capital ships, over 3,000 support vessels. Commander Johnson let out a low whistle. They outnumber us almost 2-1. Hannah nodded calmly. The odds were even worse than they looked. Some of the Arcturian warships were enormous, 15 kilometers long, dwarfing even the _Retribution_. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals humans had never been able to duplicate. Kevin Mitchell stood silently beside Hannah, watching as the enemy vessels moved to surround the human fleet. "They're boxing us in," Commander Johnson said. "Classic encirclement formation." Hannah turned to Susan. "Any communications from them?" "Incoming transmission now, Admiral," the lieutenant replied. "Audio and video." "On screen," Hannah ordered. The main view screen filled with the image of an Arcturian military commander. His blue skin was darker than the Emperor's, almost navy in color. Gold markings on his face showed his high rank. "I am Admiral Vexkar of the Imperial First Fleet," he announced. His universal translator gave his voice a metallic edge. "Human vessels, power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your species' aggression will no longer be tolerated." Hannah glanced at Kevin, who nodded and stepped forward. "Open a channel," he said quietly. Susan tapped her console. "Channel open, sir." Kevin looked directly at the Arcturian admiral. "Admiral Vexkar, I am Diplomatic Executor Mitchell of Earth. I have a message for your Emperor." The Arcturian's face showed a flash of surprise before settling back into contempt. "The Emperor does not negotiate with lesser species, especially ones in violation of our borders." "This isn't a negotiation," Kevin replied calmly. He nodded to Susan. The lieutenant pressed a button on her console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, 1/3 of the Arcturian fleet exploded from within. Ships simply tore apart, their mighty hulls ripping open like paper. No weapons had been fired. No missiles had been launched. They just died. On the view screen, Admiral Vexkar's expression shifted from contempt to horror. Behind him, Arcturian officers rushed about in panic. What have you done?" the Admiral demanded, his voice shaking. "For 30 years, Kevin said, his voice still calm. "We've had operatives embedding themselves in your shipyards. For 30 years, we've been planting devices inside your ships as they were being built. Operation Trojan, we called it." He stepped closer to the screen. "The deaths you just witnessed, that's one human life avenged for each human life you took on Rigel 7. Kevin's eyes were cold as he delivered the final part of his message. "We have 49,700 more accounts to settle." The Arcturian admiral's face paled to a light blue. "This is impossible. Our security was focused on your enemies," Kevin interrupted. "Not on the maintenance workers, the food servers, the cleaning staff, the people you thought were too small to matter." Hannah stepped forward to stand beside Kevin. "Admiral Vexkar, you have 2 options. Surrender your remaining vessels immediately, or we activate the rest of the devices." Vexkar's eyes darted back and forth as he considered his choices. Around him, his command staff looked to him for guidance. Finally, his shoulders slumped. I will order all ships to stand down," he said. "But know this, humans, the Emperor will not surrender so easily. Arcturus Prime is the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy." Kevin's expression didn't change. "That's fine, Admiral. We're just getting started." As the Arcturian ships powered down their weapons, Commander Johnson leaned close to Hannah. "That was almost too easy," he whispered. Hannah shook her head. This was just the greeting card. The real war begins now. 3 months passed. The human fleet carved a path through Arcturian space like a knife through butter. 6 star systems fell under their control. Unlike the Arcturians, the humans did not target civilians. Before destroying military bases, they evacuated the local populations. This surprised many alien species who had expected humans to be as cruel as their former masters. In her quarters aboard the _Retribution _, Admiral Rodriguez studied holographic maps with Kevin Mitchell. The blue glow of the projections lit their tired faces. Zorak system secured yesterday, Hannah said, marking off another conquered territory. That makes 6 systems in 3 months. Faster than we expected. Kevin nodded. He looked older now. The weight of war had left its mark. The Trojan devices made this possible. Without them, we'd still be fighting at the border. Hannah zoomed in on a heavily fortified planet at the center of Arcturian space. Intelligence reports the Emperor has withdrawn to Arcturus Prime, she said. Their home world. Conventional wisdom says it's impregnable. Kevin studied the planet carefully. It was surrounded by defense platforms, minefields, and hundreds of warships. Conventional wisdom didn't account for human ingenuity or human rage. A knock interrupted them. Commander Johnson entered, his face grim. He carried a data pad in his shaking hand. "Sir, Mom," he said, his voice tight. "We've intercepted an Imperial transmission. They're executing more colonists. 100,000 this time, from the Centauri system." Hannah slammed her fist on the table. "They think this will make us back down. That will be horrified into retreat." Kevin's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a whisper. "No, they've just signed their extinction order." He activated his comm device. "This is Executor Mitchell to all ships. Deploy the Nova packages. I repeat, deploy all Nova packages. Authorization. Mitchell Omega 773. Hannah looked at him in shock. That wasn't authorized by Congress. The Nova packages were only approved as a last resort. It was authorized the moment they decided to repeat their crime, Kevin responded. His eyes were cold, determined. Sometimes diplomacy requires the language of extinction. Commander Johnson shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, what exactly are the Nova packages?" Kevin turned to the view screen on the wall. "Watch." The screen showed a view of deep space. Distant stars twinkled peacefully. Then suddenly, 5 stars flared brightly, too brightly. The light became blinding. When it faded, where 5 stars had been, there was now nothing but expanding clouds of gas and debris. "My God," whispered Johnson. Those were entire solar systems. Uninhabited systems, Kevin clarified. Mining outposts and shipyards only. No civilian populations. Hannah's face had gone pale. "You just destroyed 5 star systems as a warning." "No," Kevin said. "I destroyed 5 star systems to show the Emperor exactly what awaits Arcturus Prime if he continues killing innocent people." He turned back to the holographic map and pointed to the Emperor's homeworld. "Set course for Arcturus Prime. Maximum speed." "But we haven't secured all the outer systems yet," Hannah protested. "Military doctrine says." "Military doctrine didn't plan for this war," Kevin interrupted. "We're not fighting for territory. We're fighting to remove one man and the system he represents." Hannah studied Kevin's face. The diplomat she had met 3 months ago was gone. In his place was something harder, colder, a weapon forged in the fires of necessity. "Very well," she said finally. "Course set for Arcturus Prime." As she left to give the orders, Commander Johnson lingered behind. "Sir," he said quietly to Kevin, "when this is over, what happens to us? To humanity?" After crossing these lines, Kevin looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. "When this is over, Peter, we'll have to find our way back to who we were, or who we want to be. But first, we finish this." Emperor Zorkath stood in his grand palace on Arcturus Prime. Tall windows showed the capital city spreading out below, a marvel of alien architecture built over 10,000 years. The palace itself was made from treasures taken from 100 conquered worlds. Gold, crystal, and strange metals that glowed with inner light lined the walls. Outside, the sky was filled with defense platforms and warships. No enemy had reached Arcturus Prime in 5,000 years. The Emperor believed none ever would. His advisors huddled nearby, their blue faces pale with worry. "The humans have destroyed 5 star systems, Your Highness," said General Drav, his voice shaking. "They approach our homeworld." The Emperor sneered. "Let them come. Arcturus Prime has defenses they cannot imagine." He walked to a large communication platform in the center of the throne room. "Prepare a galaxy-wide broadcast. I will remind everyone why the Arcturian Empire has ruled for 10 millennia." Technicians rushed to set up equipment. Soon, the Emperor's face was being transmitted to every planet, ship, and station across known space. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying the aristocratic tones of millennial rule. "The human plague approaches our sacred homeworld. They have destroyed our outposts, decimated our fleets, and threatened our very existence." Behind him stood the Imperial Palace, its splendor on full display. "But know this, the Arcturian Empire has stood for 10,000 years. We will not fall to hairless apes barely out of their atmospheric cradles." The Emperor raised his arms. "To demonstrate our resolve, we will." A rumbling sound interrupted him. The palace trembled. Outside the tall windows, the sky filled with thousands of bright lights, like falling stars streaking through the atmosphere. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded. General Drav rushed to a scanner. "Impossible. They've broken through our outer defenses. Those are human drop pods." The broadcast was still running as chaos erupted in the throne room. Guards rushed to protect the Emperor. Advisors fled in panic. The camera drone continued filming as explosions rocked the city outside. Suddenly, the palace doors burst open. Human soldiers in combat armor stormed in. Their weapons fired with precision, taking down the Imperial guards without hitting any of the unarmed advisors. The Emperor was frozen in shock. This could not be happening. Not here. Not on Arcturus Prime. The broadcast signal cut off for several seconds. When it resumed, the camera was in different hands. A human soldier held it, pointing it at the throne room. Kevin Mitchell walked slowly into frame. He wore the gray uniform of the diplomatic executor, no weapons visible. Behind him stood Admiral Rodriguez and a squad of human marines. The throne room was secure. The Emperor knelt on the floor, surrounded by human soldiers. His royal robes were dirty, his crown askew. Kevin looked directly into the camera. "People of the galaxy," he said, his voice calm. "This is Diplomatic Executor Mitchell of Earth. The reign of Emperor Zorkath has ended." He turned to the kneeling Emperor. "Your family has ruled through fear for 10,000 years. You believe that gave you the right to extinguish lives as if they were nothing. Today, you learn that humans value life precisely because it ends." Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out an antique weapon, a simple metal revolver from Earth's past. "This belongs to the family of Grace Anderson, age 7, executed on your orders on Rigel Colony." The Emperor looked up, true fear in his eyes for perhaps the first time in his life. "Wait, I can offer you 50,000 lives," Kevin asked quietly. "Can you return those?" The Emperor had no answer. "This broadcast began with your display of power," Kevin said. "It will end with ours. But our power comes not from cruelty, but from justice." The shot echoed across every world receiving the transmission. Kevin holstered the ancient weapon and turned back to the camera. "To all planets under Arcturian rule, your oppression is over. Earth seeks no empire. We seek only justice. And today, justice has been served." He nodded to the soldier holding the camera. End transmission. 6 months after the fall of Arcturus Prime, Kevin Mitchell stood at a podium in a vast circular chamber. This was the newly formed Galactic Concord, a meeting place for all species formerly under Arcturian rule. The room was filled with representatives from 36 different planets. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien, beings of crystal, gas, or strange energies. Behind Kevin sat Admiral Rodriguez and President Garcia, who had traveled from Earth for this historic moment. The war was over. The Arcturian Empire had collapsed after the Emperor's death. Now came the harder part: building peace. The Arcturian Empire believed strength came from cruelty, Kevin began, his voice carrying across the chamber. They believed the ability to take life granted them the right to do so. Humanity rejected that premise. He looked older now. The fire of vengeance had burned out, leaving behind a man tempered by what he had seen and done. His gray uniform had been replaced by simple civilian clothes. "We did not come to conquer," he continued. "We came to liberate. The former imperial worlds will determine their own destinies. Earth seeks no territory, no reparations, no eternal monuments to our victory." A delegate rose, General Karn of the Regelians. He was one of the few military leaders to escape the massacre that had started this war. His skin was green, his eyes large and sad. "And what guarantee do we have that humans won't become the new Arcturians?" he asked. "Your power is unchecked in this region of space. Your weapons destroyed entire star systems. Why should we trust you won't rule us next?" A murmur ran through the chamber. Many delegates nodded in agreement. Kevin nodded. "A valid concern. Which is why, effective immediately, I am ordering all human military forces to withdraw from liberated territories." Gasps of surprise filled the room. "We came to end an atrocity, not to perpetuate the cycle of dominance," Kevin said. "The Nova packages have been destroyed. The plans erased. Such weapons should never exist again, not in human hands or any others." President Garcia stepped forward to stand beside Kevin. Her dark hair was streaked with more gray than 6 months ago. The war had aged everyone. Furthermore, she announced, Earth commits to the Galactic Concord Charter, mutual defense, open borders, and binding arbitration of all interspecies disputes. As the delegates discussed among themselves, some still suspicious, others cautiously hopeful, Admiral Rodriguez approached Kevin. "Do you think they understand why we had to be so ruthless?" she asked quietly. "Why diplomacy had to fail?" Kevin watched the various species that weeks ago had been enemies now beginning to form alliances and friendships. A Regelian child was playing with a young Arcturian in one corner of the chamber, the next generation, perhaps free from the hatred of their parents. "I think they understand perfectly," he replied. "Sometimes diplomacy isn't about preventing war. It's about ensuring the right kind of peace follows it." Hannah studied him. "What will you do now? Return to diplomatic service?" Kevin shook his head. "No, that part of my life is over." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his diplomatic executor insignia, the symbol of Earth in mourning. He placed it on the podium and stepped away. "The ghosts of Rigel 7 will always be with me," he said. "But perhaps now they can rest, and perhaps I can learn to live with what I've done in their name." As the session ended, Kevin walked alone through the grand halls of the Concord building. Outside, the alien sun was setting, casting long shadows. In the distance, he could see human ships preparing to leave orbit, heading home to Earth. The war was over, justice had been served. And across the galaxy, 50,000 souls could finally rest in peace. End.